Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Creative Real Estate Ownership. My name is Josh Silverman. Today's episode is called Why Texas Outbuilds California in Housing. It's part of the series of videos where I try to understand the root causes of California's affordability crisis and take a deeper look at states that are doing it better, places that are doing it better. And nobody's doing it better right now than Texas. I'm wearing my shirt from Texas today in honor of this episode. I lived down there for 3 years in my late 20s, and my buddy who's still there sent this to me, and I love it, so I'm rocking it. Jumping into a look at the two states, I wanted to first take a look at population issues and the effect of affordable housing on population growth, right? And so the fastest growing state in the country from July of 2023 to July of 2024 was Texas. Roughly 550,000 people moved in, and you compare that to around 230,000 people moving into California. And so, you could say on one level, people are preferring to move to Texas over California, a rate of 2 to 1. And so that's happening. The state is growing at a faster clip than us. Couple of stats to share with you in relation to housing and how different our two states are performing. Texas was the number one state for permitted housing units in 2024, accounting for 15% of the U.S. total, while they are only 9% of the U.S. population. So that gives you a sense of how aggressive and how much housing they are building. In 2024 alone, the Dallas and Houston metropolitan areas, which have roughly about 8 million people, approved over 30,000 more homes than the entire state of California, which is roughly 39 million people. So that is shocking, right? And that explains what's going on here. Another stat I found really compelling is looking at housing starts per 1,000 existing homes. So how many new homes get built per 1,000 existing homes already on the ground? The second and third best places in the country were in Texas. The second being Austin, Round Rock, San Marcos area, and the third being Dallas and Fort Worth, Arlington area, building 28.6 and 22.2 houses per 1,000 existing homes. Second worst in the country, San Francisco, Oakland, and Fremont areas, building 3.1 houses per 1,000 existing homes. So that just gives you a snapshot of how different we are and how many more homes they are building in Texas than us. So where are those new Texans coming from and why, right? And so the top two groups were interesting. The number one largest group moving to Texas are actually international immigrants. So that's legal and illegal immigration. So that's the largest bulk. And the second largest group were, you guessed it, Californians, which I thought was amazing. So nearly 500,000 Californians moved to Texas between 2009 and 2023. So why are we losing Californians to Texas? You obviously know where I'm kind of going with this, but there was a study that really kind of illuminated the problem. They broke out all the people moving to Texas from different states and polled them and said, well, why'd you leave your state and move to Texas? The people in California stated they were 56% more likely to state they were moving because of cheaper housing. So we do know why they're leaving this state to go to Texas, right? They're moving for cheaper housing. They're not wrong. The median price in Texas of a home is a little over $353,000. Median price in California, in comparison, is a little over $906,000. The median price in the United States, the whole country, is a little over $462,000. So Texas is coming in over $100,000 less than the national median, which is also impressive. So why is Texas so cheap, right? And there's a number of different reasons. The first one being land. Land is a lot cheaper and very readily available in Texas. when I was driving when I moved to Texas, I drove from California down there, and you're going across plains for days, and you don't know where you're going to get there. And there's tons of land. Roughly over 80% of it is not developed, right? So land is available and cheap. Cost of living, so lower utility costs, gas, electric, food, services. Accordingly, cheaper labor, right? So international immigration plays a role in cheaper labor, but with the cost of living being lower, you can pay less wages, right? And that keeps the cost of housing down. Taxes. There's no state income tax in Texas, so that's related to the lower cost of living. Property tax rate is actually higher in Texas compared to California, but if you're paying a higher rate on a $350,000 house compared to a lower rate on a $900,000 house, you are still winning in Texas in terms of taxes. Less natural disasters in Texas. So hurricanes, and you have to build homes accordingly in those regions that are affected by hurricanes. But here we have more widespread issues, wildfires, earthquakes, and the building standards that are required in order to make homes more resilient in the face of those natural disasters are expensive. So Texas doesn't have to deal with that. I think the biggest issue and the biggest reason Texas homes are cheaper, well, one of the biggest, most important factors is Texas is a very business-friendly state. And what that means in terms of building housing is just less regulations, less processes, less approvals. I think getting your general contractor's license is way easier in Texas compared to California. So it's again, the business-friendly environment means it's just pro-building, right? So we're very good in California at saying no a lot of times, and no for good reasons sometimes, and sometimes it's just so good reasons, right? And so the city jurisdictions have 30 to 45 days to approve or deny a project. And if there's no response, it's automatically approved, which I don't fully understand how that's possible to approve a project you haven't seen. So why is California so expensive? So I identify 4 reasons quickly here. We have stricter zoning laws. What can be built and where and when and how is more tightly regulated. So it just kind of limits your options. There's more environmental reviews. Those are very costly, right? The environmental impact reports are expensive, and then there's a lot of, they take time, and there's a lot of input from different parties, and that gets passed on to the cost of housing. Quake safety, which I mentioned, building standards to create earthquake resilience, more expensive. Energy efficiency requirements. So we're trying to build more green here, which is great. But it's costly, and there's more time, review, processes, different materials, not cheap. We have our soft costs, like permitting and reporting and all this like pre-development time are very, very high here, and I get into that later. Our land costs are very high as well. So when you're directly comparing the two states, I wanted to kind of look at these things. Cost. So the actual cost to build a house, the materials, the labor involved when you're actually building it, it was the smallest difference out of the factors that I looked at. It was only 1.5 times more expensive to build a house here in California than in Texas, which I thought was not so bad considering the price of housing. So that was not a major factor. Land costs are, it's about 3 times in California to buy land here compared to in Texas. So the land is roughly about 10% of a project, whereas here it represents about 20% of the overall cost of the project. So that's a big swing. Time to build, major difference. In California's average housing development takes 2 years longer than in Texas, 2 years compared to 4 years on average. So pre-development time, processes, more permissions, more delays, navigating all the land uses, all of that. So twice as long to build makes it much more expensive. The largest difference here is in soft costs. And it's 4 times more expensive in California than in Texas. So These are all related to policy choices, right? These are things that we've voted in or that we've decided that we needed. And so there's all these reviews and permitting and reporting and fees and paying professionals to get us through all of these stages. Developed impact fees in the Bay Area averaged $31,000 per market rate unit versus $816 in Texas. So huge difference in soft costs. The final result, it costs $531 per square foot to build market rate housing in California compared to $167 in Texas. Huge difference. Let's get into some possible solutions, how to remedy this, how to make housing more affordable, cheaper to build in California. I looked at a study put together by the RAND Corporation, and the idea of these things. Inspections. Work harder to synchronize inspections. So inspections, you built your foundation, now you need to, you're ready to move on to framing, yet there's a 1 month delay in getting somebody to come out and inspect the foundation so you can move on. So synchronizing your inspections, example of a delay, but those delays, add up over time. And so how can you synchronize them to bring that overall development time tighter, right? To get closer to that 2-year period that Texas is doing. Energy efficiency requirements. So they recommend we review the efficacy of these requirements, right? So are the energy efficiency requirements making it so that you don't build at all? If some of these costs get added, eventually you're like, I'm not going to build. This doesn't pencil anymore. So does it make sense to build a home that is less energy efficient than no home at all, right? So trying to understand if that's the case and adjusting those regulations accordingly. The most important factor identified in this study was really to reduce the pre-development time. So all those permissions, reviews, permitting, all of that stuff that I've already talked about, really tighten that way up and make it much more streamlined. And we have a long history in California of discretionary reviews where everybody gets a say, and it's well-intentioned, and it's designed so all the stakeholders have a say and a piece of what gets built and where and why and how. But sometimes there's just so much input that it just slows the process way down. And then there's all this risk of lawsuits, right? So that people get 2/3 through the process and a lawsuit comes out, and then that delays the process. So really trying to get away from so many discretionary reviews, right? And we're now moving into kind of this phase that's exciting of by right approvals. So by right approvals just refer to you a list of criteria that a developer has to do, and if you meet all that criteria, by right, the project is approved. So you don't have all these unknown variables of all these different people that can jump in and kind of shut a project down. I talk about that in Berkeley, and that's happening here, which is interesting. So those are some solutions that were cited, and I think that we can do. There's not a whole lot we can do about cheaper land necessarily right away, but we can do some of these 3 things, which is great. Until we deal with some of these kind of more macro level issues, we have to continue to be creative and to get into this market, stay in this market. And that's what I'm here for. Please subscribe to this video here, email me here, and don't leave the Bay, get creative, and thanks for joining me today.